You can go up on school. My latest post, I'm talking 15 minutes ago. I just added up these two for those that were at the live event. Like Richard was there, Parker was there, obviously Zane. I'm not really sure anybody else that was on for that. But what we did is we went over. I want to spend a few minutes. What we're going to do this afternoon is um, Matt's got a cool business that he's doing, and I want to have Matt kind of go into some details on what he's doing in his real estate business. But I also wanted to today, and Richard's got a little thing that he's working on that maybe we can discuss too, Richard, if you're not opposed to that.
Sure.
We can just kind of go over the way that I look at it. But I think in the first 20 minutes of this call, I want to go back to the basics. We've all, the underwriting basics, because I think that this is important as we're, underwriting real estate. It's the only thing that really matters when we're doing deals does the deal pencil or does it not, So if y'all aren't opposed to that, I'd like to just go. So if you guys, like I said, if you guys can pull this up, uh, I just think it'd be really beneficial for all of us to just go and do this together. So you guys are, like you said, it's on that first on school. Does everybody have these docs and we can do them together?
Yep, I see him.
Yeah, I'll print it off.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and print it off, or I'll. And the thing, Zane and I, we look back, and I was like, I'm so upset that at our live event, I didn't put like these numbers actually up here when I did it. So that's 100% on me. I wish I would have done that, but I'm doing it today. So there's that. Um, so here's what I want to do is I want to just do. Let's go over all six of these. Intrinsic value, debt service coverage ratio, capitalization rate, rent per foot, cash flow to equity, and then cash on cash return. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this little call it our prompt, which is a building that you guys got a chance to walk. It had all that stuff in there. Um, uh, I'd be shocked if he's actually moved any of that stuff out. If he did, it'd be pretty wild. It was packed full. Matt, if you were there, dude, it was. You feel like you were on like national treasure, and it just kept going and going and going with just more stuff. It was wild. But okay, so let's just do this together, guys, and we're going to use this prompt. We're going to use these values because really, as you guys know, um, this is really where the rubber meets the road for all of us that are investing. Right? The name of the game is does a deal pencil or not? Okay, so if we're going to go find this property value, let's look. Is everybody with me on this? Okay, cool. All right, let's just do this together, like I said. So let's use this prompt here, the physical attributes, financials, and then the tenant lease attributes. Let's find all this information. Again, this is what typically the information that you'll get as you're uncovering and doing your due diligence. All right. So let's just roll this up. So first, let's do this first. Let's pull up our physical attributes. Oops, here we go. So we need to make sure that this building fits our physical attributes, right? So here's what we're looking for: 10 to 40,000 square feet, 16-foot clear heights, multiple roll-up doors, less than a mile off the highway. If it's owner-occupied, awesome. If it's not, that's okay too. The reason why we like owner-occupied, of course, is because there's a much higher likelihood of that seller leaving money in the deal. Okay, so if we pull up here the physical attributes, this is the building address. If you haven't seen this one already, I'll show it to you really quickly. This is that building. Like I said, if you guys have, and like I said, Richard and Zane, everybody, they got a chance to actually meet Jerry, the owner, which was, I don't know, kind of cool, I guess. But this is the building, right? It's just a boring warehouse, literally off the side of the highway, and all this stuff is filled with probably a couple $1 million worth of just stuff. But that's the property. Okay.
Well, we can't see it.
Oh, am I not sharing my screen already?
No, I mean I can't see
Oh
it.
my gosh, guys, I'm sorry. I was sharing my screen the whole time. Geez, sorry about that, everyone. Y'all were just looking at me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I thought I was like going back and forth and sharing everything. Okay. So Let's see here. Let's pull this up here. Pull to the top. There we go. All right. Everybody can see my stuff now?
Yep.
Sorry, guys. Man, I'm totally thrown off by that. Okay. So again, the physical attributes, the financial attributes, the tenant lease, we're going to pull up the intrinsic value, the debt service coverage ratio, the capitalization rate, the rent per foot, cash flow to equity, and the cash on cash return. Let's just underwrite this one deal together. That way, when you go find your next site, you're able to know, okay, what information do I need here in order to find these, six main attributes. So if I'm looking at trying to find the intrinsic value, we need to find the net operating income and divide it by the market cap rate. So again, well, let's take a step back first. Let's think about those physical attributes that we need first. So 28,000 square feet is what this building is, which fits within our 10 to 40,000 feet. So it's 1-for-1. It's got 22-foot ceiling height, clear height. So 2-for-2, we need to have at least 16,000 feet. The land really isn't important. It's got two 16-foot roll-up doors, so it checks the multiple roll-up door box. It's less than a mile off the highway from I-20. Leeds is actually 15 miles east of Birmingham, so it's like actually headed that direction towards Atlanta. Replacement cost, that's not really important. The seller is the owner user. He's in the auction business. He owned the property, did the whole thing. So we got kind of a 5-for-5 on like the physical attributes. Now, there wasn't a triple net lease in place. So he was, again, owning it by himself. So that's something that we negotiated. But it checks the physical attributes of what we're looking for. Okay. So now if we're looking for property value, we need to discover what the net operating income is and what the market cap rate is. So if we're looking at the financial attributes here, I'm going to pull up your calculator. So what we agreed on was $4.50 a square foot. So if that's the lease, without me telling you guys what the net operating income is, how do we discover what our NOI is based upon the square footage and what the rent per foot is, right? So he's renting it right now. Of course, we're skipping a little bit ahead, of course. But if we want to find the net operating income, and we know that the rent per foot right now was $4.50 a foot, how do we discover the net operating income?
Multiply
All right, what are we multiplying?
the rent per square foot times the square footage.
Nice. All right, so we've got 28,000 square feet, 28,000 multiplied by 4.5 or $4.50. So that equals a net operating income. Now, this building is a triple net lease, so I'm earning, whatever that number is. It's like $10,500 a month in rent, but I'm also getting a check. It's like 11,760 or something like that for reimbursement of taxes and insurance. But that extra $1,000 and change simply just goes into like a third party account. I mean, it goes into my account, but I don't count that as like income because that's Uncle Sam's money and that's the insurance company's money. Does that make sense? So my take home is really the $10,500 a month. Okay. So my net operating income is $126,100. Okay. $100. And then the market cap rate, look over here, anywhere from 8 to 10%, right? Obviously the lower, if I could find a new tenant after Jerry leaves and it's, let's say a national publicly traded company, I could probably sell it for a 5 cap, right? Because the risk is very low. If I put a brand new mom and pop startup business, the market cap rate is probably going to be like 15%. Based upon someone's going to need a higher rate of return to take on greater risk, right? So call this thing right in the middle. Call it a 9% market cap rate. Would that be fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 9%. 9%. Or, of course, that just could be 0.09. So then, who discovered what's the property's value? What's the intrinsic value of that real estate?
1.4 million.
1.4 million. Perfect. 1.4 million bucks. So that's the intrinsic value of that property. Okay. When it's a market cap rate, of 9%. Now, again, if we get a better tenant, we might be able to sell it at an 8 cap or maybe even a 7.5 cap. And that just pumps up the property value, right? Because you can't really change the net operating income, right? Well, you can, of course, and that's going to increase the value too. But that's what I'm saying. Depending upon the new tenant, when this guy leaves, we're going to be on the same page. Okay. Let's go over to, let's go
I
over
have
to,
a
go ahead,
I have a
Zane.
question about that actually.
Who has a
So,
question about that?
okay, so 9% market cap rate, and if we're talking about exit refi cap rates,
Yeah.
I know that if it's a really strong tenant and everything, that will change the cap rate on the market. But what about if you're going to refinance from a bank? Will the cap rate change in the bank's eyes, the market cap rate, or how does that affect the cap rate if you're wanting to refinance versus sell a building?
No, no. So the bank is not going to look at the cap rate. The bank's just going to look at the appraisal.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you go and the appraiser is going to look at what's trading around it.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So they're going to be like, hey, there's been in the last 6 months, man, there's been a couple buildings that have sold for at 7.5 cap rates. Wow, that's crazy. And they take that into account what the market's trading. And that has a lot to do with interest rates. That has a lot to do with, I mean, honestly, even like 1031 money that's out there in the market. Like um, that appraiser is going to take into account the appraiser is going to kind of do um, he has a little bit of residential blood in him where he's going to look at what's traded lately. What's the market, what's the technicals of right now, what's really going on right now out in the marketplace. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The bank is just going to look at, and then of course they're going to look at your debt to income ratio. Like they're going to say, okay, I'll lend you as much as I can until we feel uncomfortable if that debt ratio gets too small,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go over here to our debt service coverage ratio. Okay, we might have to pull up our pro forma a little bit. That's okay though. So we've already discovered our net operating income. So we can put $126,000 in there, 126,000, and then we got to discover our debt service. So our debt service is going to, again, I can pull this up on our pro forma.
It's the 275, 25 year at 6%.
I wish.
Oh,
Do
I
I,
thought
is that what I have
that's
on?
the seller finance portion. Got it.
Oh yeah,
It's
I'm talking to, yeah, the seller finance portion, sweet. I'm talking about the bank loan.
yeah.
Yeah. So the seller finance portion, candidly, I'm not even gonna like pay him anything. He's just gonna pay me. And I'm also that's also on a balloon payment. So I'm just like when I go to refinance, I'm gonna pay him all that extra interest. So I'm not like paying him that right now. If that makes sense. That was just part of how we negotiated. Let's see here.
That does, but you have to work that in. I mean, some individual might assume they're going to get the interest payments per month. So your agreement is you'll give him the full balloon of 275 plus interest
That's
at
right.
the end of the term.
At the end of the term, the difference would be um, again, this guy's an owner user. So if in this case, if he's paying me 10,500 bucks and my interest to him is 2 grand or whatever the number would be, he would just pay me 8,500 bucks. I don't want him to pay me and then me repay him back. I'm like, that's on my accounting spreadsheet, I'm gonna put that I earned this and then paid him that just because that's for interest deduction, of course. But I'm not gonna get super cute with him and dance around and do that whole number. So I borrowed it's like 800,000 bucks from this dude from West Alabama Bank. Let's do this. So 1075. I borrowed 75% and I got at the time. It's actually a floating interest rate. So every month my mortgage payment has actually gone down since I've owned the building. But call it, and I've got 12 months of interest only with this with West Alabama. And I borrowed, it was like right at 800,000. Yeah. So and maybe a little bit of change. Let's see here. Amortization schedule. So yeah, so 6,400 bucks, but that's principal and interest. So if I go down to our property cash flows, you'll see my IO debt service. So roughly I'm paying 5 grand a month. I think my first payment was like 5,200 bucks and some change. And maybe this month it might be $5,100 because my interest rate floated down by 25 bips. So call it $5,500 though. Let's just say that just to be round and conservative. Is that fair? So if we go back over here to our debt service, again, this is on an annual basis. So call it $5,500 a month. 5,500 times 12. Call it $66,000. Now, again, this is interest only. If there was principal attached to this, you could probably add another 15 grand, you know. Maybe we should just do that anyway, because I feel like it resonates more with the reality. So let's just do that. Sorry, guys, I'm not trying to. So let's say it's $6,500. Yeah, I've got about $1,500 of principal. So let's say
78,000.
Okay, $78,000. Perfect. Exactly. Okay, $78,000. Oops, 78,000. Okay. Now we just got to figure out what that ratio is. 126 divided by 78,000. What'd y'all get?
1.62.
1.62. Now, that's a pretty strong debt ratio. 162. And not to mention, too, this building is at $450 a foot. The market rent is actually closer to like $525 a foot. And I got them right now at $450. So this number could actually really increase once I re-tenant it, the space to a new tenant, or I renegotiate the lease with the existing user. So, but 162 is strong. That's a low risk deal. Like, you guys know, you get a bank that will lend at 120, 125. You got this thing a lot larger than that. There's a large spread between that operating income and your debt service. That's strong. Okay, let's go capitalization rate. We're starting to fill this out a little bit. So we got net operating income, $126,000. Our purchase price got over here for $1,075,000. Okay. Who knows what the going in cap rate is? What'd y'all come up with?
11.7 is what I got.
11.7.
11.7. All right. Again, pretty strong. And again, so what we're discovering as we're doing this too is we're hitting our financial boxes. Like, we're hitting these boxes. It's not a 3-year lease. We've got the square footage. We got the clear height. We got the roll-up doors. We got the distance. Owner occupied. We're checking that box. We got above a 1.4 debt ratio. We just discovered we got above a 10% cap rate. Now we're about to do cash on cash return. Discover this. Here we go. We'll do it in a minute. Let's discover rent per foot. How do we get to this one? Again, net operating income, 126,000. And then rentable square footage. Let's see.
28,000.
28,000. 28,000. What'd y'all come up with?
4.5.
4.5. So $450 a foot. And like I said, you can see down here, that's where I said it's a $4.50 triple net lease where the market is at $525 a foot. So really, like you said, the intrinsic value of this real estate is 1.4. I bought it for 1,075. So I already purchased it at a discount. Remember, the way you increase the value is by increasing the net operating income, because cap rate really is going to stay consistent. It's not going to change. So the way you increase this value is by increasing this operating income. So I've already purchased it under the market value or under the intrinsic value. I know that I'm renting it for under market rent. So imagine this number cranks up to whatever that is, 28,000 times 525. I can increase my net operating income to 147,000, which is 21,000 extra dollars. So 147 divided by 0.09. The true intrinsic value when released is $1.63 million. So I roughly have a building that I purchased at a discount with, again, the seller to leave money in the deal. at basically $500,000 off when it's released at the market rent. Does that make sense how I got to that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thinking about it from that perspective, that's where, and then like I said, that's when you can refinance. When you buy it at such a good deal, you can refinance more debt, pay the seller off his second position, usually with the same bank too, especially if interest rates have gone down. You can just recast and refinance the loan, and you got still now one loan, and you don't have any money in the deal. It's the same song and still cash flows. Okay, cash flow to equity, net operating income, $126,000. We divide that. Let's see, everybody over here. Let's see.
We dividing or subtracting? It looks like
Oh,
subtracting on your.
sorry. I trying to be fancy with my little bar here. Whatever, that's how it goes. 126,000 minus that. Our debt service, which is 78,000. Okay. Which is going to equal how much? Minus
1.62.
No, we're subtracting.
Oh, that's what I said. I thought you said we were dividing.
No, that's what. No, someone said subtracting. I was like, oh yeah, sorry. I thought I initially put divide. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, 48,000.
It's
I have a
48,000.
dividing bar up here. I'm so bad. Sorry about that, guys.
I'm confused. I got it now.
Okay, that's on me. Sorry about that, guys.
48,000.
There you go. Sorry. Okay. Yep. Messed that up. 48,000. 48,000 cash flow to equity. And then last but not least, our cash on cash return, which is, let's assume that the seller did not leave money in this deal. Let's just assume that for a second. Because this is a little outside the scope if we talk about like, seller leaving money in the deal and things. So again, our net cash flow is different than our net operating income. Who knows why?
Because we're paying debt service.
Right. That's exactly right. Net operating income is before debt service. Net cash flow is what you take home after all your expenses and debt service is paid. Follow that? So those are the two main differences. Net operating income is before. So if you look on here, so you guys can see on your own pro formas, look up here. So here's our gross income right here. Gross income, net operating income. And this is just some building, I guess, whatever. Net operating income, debt service, cash flow to equity. And this is our cash flow to equity. Where's my thing again? Okay. So net cash flow in this case would be our cash flow to equity of, and if you notice something too, guys, as you go from left to right like this, intrinsic value to debt service, cap rate to rent per foot, cash flow to equity, cash on cash, they all start to auto-populate a little bit. You can start to discover the values. And also too, on your pro forma, guys, if you look at overview, all this stuff will auto-populate on this page if you go into the assumption page and maneuver and manipulate the blue numbers. So I just personally think it's important as everyone's kind of moving down the field, you start to just be able to understand like, okay, I can do this on the back of a napkin, right? Like that's versus just punching a couple numbers in and seeing what populates. I think it's good to understand this. So $48,000. And then in that case, let's say we injected the equity of the $275,000 that the seller financed me. Let's say let's say you showed up with that just to keep the numbers round. Okay. 275. All right. Who's got this number?
17.45 or 17.5.
Yeah. 17.45. That's right. Yeah. 17.45%. So yeah, you can always round up on that, whatever. But okay, so 17.45. So if I go back to our, you know, request for partnership, cash on cash return was 17. So that checks that box. And then the seller financed the down payment. That's kind of the cherry on the top. He did do that. So you're looking at the only thing that this deal did not, the only box this deal did not check was the initial lease, right? The lease that was a 3-year triple net lease. I've got them on a lease on a triple net lease now, but here's a little thought process, guys. Think about this. The way that I did this deal in the beginning was this seller, like I told you, he had so much stuff inside. I mean, it was crazy how packed it is. There was no way that he was going to be able to remove all of that product and all of his inventory within 60 days of closing. It was just going to be impossible. So my offer to him was unique. I said, hey, you're in a situation, I want to buy your property, but you don't have the time. So I offered him a couple of months of no rent payments in exchange for him leaving money in the deal. And that way I was able to buy the property, get him what he wanted, which gave him some time to, he's still in there. He's actually probably added some more stuff to it since we bought it. But what I'm getting at is, even though this deal did not have a 3-year lease when I bought it, I was able to get into it creatively because I gave the seller what he needed, which was time. And then that exchange gave me what I wanted, which was the seller to leave money in the deal. So that's just a little negotiation point, like figure out what his situation is, what his story is, and how you can come up with a solution for it. Who has the thought or question on that? How we were kind of walking down that, you know, these kind of must-haves.
That's good. And so for the cash on cash return in particular, that's it's particularly useful if you're actually injecting your own cash or from an investor rather than taking on the seller's down payment.
That's right. That's right. And I'll show you guys something too. I should have pulled this up earlier. I had it pulled up earlier. This is an email when I was, so let me give everybody a quick thought. Zane was in my office earlier. We were discussing this, and I want everyone to be like really clear about something, that no matter what, when I find a deal, I am always raising capital. I'm always spending my time speaking with other investors, people that have income problem. They don't have depreciation deduction. They don't have write-offs. They don't maybe understand real estate. They don't understand the investments. So what I'm doing is I'm consciously and consistently raising money from investors. Hey, what's your situation? Do you want to invest? And I'm constantly educating, potential investors on how and why a deal might make sense for them, or maybe this deal they should pass on, right? So when I initially got this deal under contract, I had in that moment had not had the seller agree to leave money in the deal, right? I was planning on partnering with somebody, then bringing, again, the usual deal where they bring the money, they get all their money back until their principal is repaid, and then we split the cash flow. But I shot this over to a potential investor, and I detailed out every single piece that came with it. So I shot on the purchase agreement that we had, and I shot on my pro forma, just me, working it out, which is almost as identical numbers as to what, we all spoke about before. So what I'm getting at is, for everyone that's in your shoes right now, you focus on continuing to work in relationships with brokers, but don't be thinking about not trying to build relationships with investors too. Everyone's looking for, I have on here too, if you notice right here, like just kind of going in cap rates, some of the stuff that we've discovered, depreciation deduction, $180,000. So for him, that seller, or that, not that seller, but that investor, he might have a huge need for that because of this particular tax year, so that might jump out to him. But so don't ever hesitate to be raising capital when you don't necessarily have the seller leave money in the deal yet. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Anybody else have thoughts or questions on that? What else is on someone else's mind before we jump to the next one?
Can you explain again the reason for the year balloon rather than trying to go longer with him, or was that really all he was willing to agree to?
I initially shot it out at 36 months. His son, this guy's unique. His son is his business partner, and when he actually wanted to leave more money in the deal than 275, but his son was in a weird spot and wanted the money, did not care about his daddy's tax problem. And so that's when I went back to him. Actually, I just one day I was just driving. I'm like, I'm gonna freaking call this guy. I'm gonna figure this out. And so I literally just called him back up. I said, Jerry, I need you to leave money in this deal. I was like, I know what your son thinks, and I know that, your tax problem isn't important to him. Well, it's important to you, and this is the best solution that we have right now. And I've got another broker that's a 1031 guy that if you're in a serious situation, I can introduce him to you, and you can really drop that tax bill down to zero. I said, Jerry, I need you to leave money in this deal. I wasn't pleading with him, but I came off with this like confidence of just this is what we're doing kind of attitude. He's like, all right, Nolan, I think I can do that. I think I can do that. But you think we can go maybe? And that's when I was like, look, instead of it being 36 months, let's make it a 12-month balloon payment. Let's make it a 12-monther. At that moment, too, my debt will have seasoned. I can always refinance. I could sell it if I wanted to, whatever. But most importantly, I gave him something that he wanted so I could get that, him to leave 275 in the deal versus me having to give equity up to somebody else. Does that answer your
Right.
question?
Yeah. It was more about the length of time. So it was what fit his need.
Yeah, it fit
And
his need. I
then,
mean, I
yeah,
wish he would go 60 months. That way I could
absolutely.
really lock it
Yeah.
in. His situation was in the boat of, hey, I'm only going to do this because my son needs the money, and this is really kind of the best I can do right now. And I was like, fine, whatever, I'll do it. You know,
Yeah.
which just gets me in the deal. Then I can just figure it out once I'm in the deal versus like, oh God, because I knew the metro, I knew the math, right? Like I knew what the value of the building was. So I knew I was getting a good deal. And in my head was I knew that I can increase the rents. I knew that I had interest only on my debt service. So I had cheap debt. And I knew that once his lease came up for renewal, or I found a new guy, I knew I could again increase the rents, would increase the value, and I did not want to give up that upside of appreciation. Plus, I didn't want to give up the depreciation for tax purposes. So that's why I was so adamant about. I mean, I just spilled the beans with him. I was like, "Look, Jerry, I don't want to give up ownership to somebody else. I want this deal to be between you and me. That's who you and I've been talking with the whole time. It's you and me on this one. Let's get this thing to the finish line." And that's when he was like, "Okay, that's a good idea, Nolan. I really like where your head is." So then I became like that seller consultant that we talk about all the time.
No, out of
Yeah.
curiosity, what was his original asking price? Do you remember?
1, 2, maybe.
Okay, so you weren't that far off.
No, we weren't very far off at all. And believe it or not, once I tied the deal up, it was totally off market. And my broker Sam, who y'all got which I don't think y'all got a chance to meet, but he calls me, hey, you want to go buy something? I was like, yeah. We went and looked at this building on like a Monday, and we had agreed on terms on Friday. Like it was that fast. So it was he, the seller's broker is actually another broker buddy of mine. We're actually selling the building in like a couple of weeks. He's doing it with me. And he, I mean, I think he kind of left some money on the deal or, on the table for his seller because I bet you he could have popped. I mean, this building is in immaculate shape. I mean, for those if you paint the outside of that building, I mean, the roll-up doors are new. The roof is brand new. He put the roof on in 2019, like $100,000 roof on it. Yeah, you could update some office, but it's just wide open warehouse. So and it's right off the highway, right closer to Atlanta. So the location is prime time. It's wide open, multiple roll-up doors, one dock high door. So I was like, I'm just not giving up ownership in this. This is like I got to find a way. So we just came together and found a way, I guess. Yeah. Anybody else thoughts on that or whatever before we jump to the next? Cool. All right. I thought we just would go over that today. I thought that was just important just to I don't know, just to kind of get us all on the same page on underwriting and making sure we're on the same page. That's an easy exercise too. Like when you guys go are looking at buildings, print that thing out. Like for what example, guys, like if you want to, like I've got a laminator at my office. I'm sounds ridiculous. Zane will laugh, but I'm like into laminating stuff now. Like all the time I'm laminating stuff because it just makes me want. I've got the blueprint in my car. I have it like every time I'm looking at a building, I'm always trying to focus on like where I am in my pipeline. And so what you guys can do too is even if you have like I mean, just like a little like, not a Sharpie, but like a dry erase pen like this, laminate your must-have metrics like that. And while you're in your car, if you're looking at a building, don't be, you can just write on it and then erase it, so just it allows you when you're looking at a building, you're driving, say, okay, what's the market cap rate on this? If I was to buy this building, just kind of just exercising your mind like that. It just sharpens the pen a little bit. It sharpens the pencil. So cool. All right. Matt, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit more about your story and kind of what you're doing? I thought that when Zane told me about what you're up to, I was like, man, this is really interesting. Maybe he'd like to kind of talk at our one of our live calls. Would you be opposed to that?
No, I'd love to. I'd love
Awesome.
to.
See if
No,
I,
we teed this up, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a little couple of slides just
yeah, great.
so I'm following an outline.
Yeah.
So everybody can see my screen, I hope.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I really liked the idea of this group. Smaller core set of individuals, but you're growing quickly, Nolan. But you're very niche in your acquisitions, very specific buy box and commercial where I'm definitely falling in love with more. Um, so I just wanted to share what I do in addition to working to find commercial properties. But first of all, I'm based in Southern California, and if there's other people in the group or on the recording that want to connect and meet up and go look at properties together, I'd love to do that. I think there's a few that I've seen in the group that are from Southern California. So just throwing that out there, always definitely into collaborating to make something happen. So all right, you're seeing the slide page, right?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
you're good.
Okay,
Good.
good. So it's myself and my wife, Ohio River. After I left my W-2 this year, we took a trip and wrote it all off by going and looking at our real estate, and took advantage of tax deductions there. So been in real estate since 2020. I started transactional funding, which I'll get into in 2023. I've been able to fund it's more than that now. It's but at the time of this slide, 2.3 million. It's probably more around 2.5 or 6 in transactional funding, and I'll get into what that means. And I consider myself a creative finance strategist. Been able to work on a number of deals where we've been able to help people get into properties with very little of their own money. So I feel like that really fits here, especially already talking about the seller finance piece, and with sellers being very of commercial properties being very aware of seller finance. It opens that avenue up rather than when you're buying a house from a resident there. That's not where they come from, but actually when you're in business, you see the sense in the numbers there. You're in that day in and day out trying to make those numbers work. So I think this is a good avenue to be working with people to make some things happen. So there's a page of addresses that I've funded, some of them duplicates, but different elements, earnest money, double closing, and down payment transactional funding.
Interesting.
So I thought, I'm a story. I'm not good at stories, to be honest, but I'm going to force myself to start with a story and then work my way through the mundane if we have time. But on that same trip, I had stopped in Denver and had to see this quadplex because one day I was working with basically a lending broker, and we were working on a number of deals and trying to get some private money lending type stuff going, and other transactional funding. And he sent me this address, and he said, "Hey, do you know anybody that would want to buy a property? It's a quadplex, downtown Denver, 820,000. And I said, well, okay, what's your purchase price? He said it's 800,000. I said, okay, so that's $20,000. That's a great assignment if you wholesale that. I said, what if I could get you into this property with very little, if potentially none of your own money? And he said, of course, I'd love to do that. I said, what does it appraise at? It appraised at 1.3 million. He had a desktop appraisal. He was able to get those quick answers from a connection he had. And so he ended up seeing that there was a lot of value there. So I said, well, what if we were to transactionally fund on this, where we have two contracts and I'm the first buyer, I'm buying it from the seller as the A to B buyer, and then I sell it to you. So we do what is called double close. So I dove into the details with him. I made a calculator that presented how that would work out, and I'll just kind of lay it out in pictorial view. But essentially, we had two title transactions on the same day. One for my purchase contract, the A to B buyer, and then the second, his contract. So we sent into the title company two contracts, and we said, we want to double close this. The transactions will occur on the same day. So the first purchase price, as I said, 800,000. So I ended up on the A to B contract, my LLC, for 800,000, and then I turned around and sold it to him for 1.1. So
Nice.
with the appraisal at a higher amount, including a $1.6 million ARV. So that was a $300,000 spread on that between the A to B purchase price and the B to C purchase price. And what I offered him is that we would utilize the funds in that spread, the $300,000, to essentially pay for his down payment and any other closing costs or fee with the title company. And when we laid it out there, there was plenty of meat on the bone to where we had proceeds remaining, and we were able to pay ourselves out with cash after the closing. So how do you come up with the A to B money? Do you have to pull from your bank account $800,000 to pay for it? No, you use a transactional funder, and for a small fee, you have them place their funds, which are on standby and ready to go for the closing day, to cover that transactional funding. Well, he also had a down payment because he did have a loan. He had a hard money loan, and it was, I've off the top of my head, don't remember the down payment percentage, but it was maybe 10 to 15% down payment. So we covered those funds because we had to place in a down payment in order to trigger the lender to fund their portion of the deal. So we wired money to escrow, and then the lender was notified that the down payment was there. They wrapped up the B2C in terms of the needed funds, and then we notified the $800,000 lender that money was in place. They wired their $800,000. All the funds were in at escrow, and then they closed the transactions. After closing, they opened up a second, or really a third transaction to pay us all back. So the remaining funds from what was left over, the settlement statement specified who got what. We paid off our A to B transactional funder. We paid off our B2C down payment funder. There was earnest money that was funded from a separate funder. And then the remaining got distributed to myself and the buyer. So he was liquid at the end of this, and able to get into some rehab that he was going to do on it because it did need rehab. And uh, um, so this is the type of like
It's awesome.
creative finance opportunities that are out there. If you find um, a property that is appraising much higher than it than the seller's offering to sell it for. I have a an opportunity I'm working through. It may or may not pan out, but there's these tenants in a property in Orange County, California. They are they just received an appraisal on their property, and their seller, the owner, is wants to sell it to them, and he's offering it for about half of uh, what it's worth. So they have the opportunity to do a similar activity, and I'm trying to get them to go that way because basically then they don't need a capital funder for their down payment, or they don't need to come up with the money themselves from their own um, assets. They can basically walk away, and as long as the principal and interest, taxes and insurance payments pencil out, if they work out, and your income from the business or income from rentals or the lease all work out, then this strategy works. Um, so this was one of the couple of wins, bigger wins I had this year that I really enjoy sharing about. I wondered if there's any questions up to this point. I'm just going to go into a few of the details about the different types of transactional funding that I do. But
Yeah,
I want
I
to
got a
open to
question.
see.
I have a
Yeah,
few.
yeah,
First, this is just freaking awesome, man. Like that is amazing that you're doing this. I mean, this is like that's the game. Like that's the creativity, the imagination that's required to succeed in real estate. You know, if you don't do stuff like this, you can't ever find meat on the bone, which is like kudos, man. Like you should be proud of yourself for that. That is awesome.
yeah.
Uh,
Thanks.
really cool. Two questions in out of the gate. Um, I'm assuming this does not require a unique title company. Title companies know how to do this, I'm assuming. Or do you have like one or two, somebody that you recommend? Or is it like, hey, do not talk to these people because they are retarded and they don't know what they're doing? Or do you have like a very
Yeah.
specific group that you work with? And then I
I
got one more.
definitely have title companies that I recommend to do this. Uh, you really can't go to a retail title company and expect that they're going to be able to perform a double close. And I can provide a number of title companies that will do this. Uh, or you can call up a title company and say, "Are you investor friendly? Are you familiar with double closes? Are you familiar with uh, uh, down payment transactional funding?" So if they start to speak that language, if you say, "Hey, are you familiar with subject to, and do you do subject to transactions?" and they say yes to all those things, then they're likely an investor friendly title company. But I have definitely, if you reach out to me, there's ones I recommend.
Okay. And then another question, and then other people can ask too. I'm curious. Um, I really like the idea of the earnest money fee. Like somebody else coming over the top with the earn. I mean, you can tie up 10 deals at once using someone else's money. Am I crazy?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah, that
that's
is
really
strong right there. Versus having to show up with like just
yeah,
continually leave like 400 grand in liquidity in a checking account. You're like,
right.
man, if I can use somebody else and just pay them a fee, that keeps you liquid, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's really
That look like?
the
Yeah.
point. It's if you have a lot of money, then great, use your own money. But if you want to partner with somebody to utilize their money, and I essentially have a process where I protect the funds through a few different types of contracts and through the relationship with the title company so that they are refundable during the inspection period. So the idea is I don't really want to put my money in, have the money go hard, and then have the contract cancel. Well, that puts me at risk, and then I'm out the $30,000 or whatever is the down payment or earnest money. So we do one of two things. Number one is if you're you're a wholesaler and you've got an end buyer, and the end buyer is willing to put their earnest money in, then I'm really riding it out with you during the inspection period and during the time that you're trying to find a buyer. If you're the end buyer, part of the negotiation strategy and something that really does work for these distressed sellers, these owner operators, they're probably going to be willing to negotiate that the inspection and contingency period is equal to the closing date. If you do that, then title will agree to the refundability any day during that time, even up to the day of closing. So unless it falls out the last day, we're still good because we can get it refunded back. So in your contracts, you say, whatever terminology you use, whether it's inspection period, financial, and inspection contingencies, should equal or are equivalent to the closing date. We can work on the verbiage, but essentially that's the concept, right? Make sure those two dates are the same. And then that earnest money can be refunded the entire time. And if you have a third party earnest money partner, that enables them to be there along for the ride.
That's awesome. I love that.
And yeah, so let me add to that it is kind of like having a capital partner, right? So it's a joint venture with someone that is looking to ride along for the opportunity that you have. So if you have a smoking deal, it enables you to share some of that, especially if you have 2-3 properties going on all at the same time. It allows you to both individuals to win and make the investment worthwhile.
No doubt. That's great. Who else has a question or thought on that before you go to your next thing, Matt? That's great. We're going to be chatting.
Great.
I have a question. And
Yeah.
Matt, I know we've talked about this the other day, but what purchase price compared to the either appraised value or ARV percentage wise do people need to buy a property at in order for something like this to make sense?
Yeah. That is a good question. So a rough rule of thumb should be basically 35% of the as is value or of what you could purchase it for and have it be an equivalent comp. So
can you repeat the question, please? What was it, Zane or Matt? Whoever?
Yeah, the question was just if you find a deal, what percentage under either the appraised value or the ARV would somebody have to buy it at in order for something like this to make sense? 70%, 60%,
and I said 35%, but I meant
65.
35% off, right? 65%.
Yeah.
Okay, follow that.
Yeah.
That's about right where we stand anyways, Zane,
Yeah.
It's like right down the middle of the fairway. Like buying them, that's the 70% calculator that we talk about. Yeah, nailed it.
Right. And what that does is it enables you to, it's dependent upon your down payment, it's dependent upon your title company fees, and then it's dependent upon your transactional funding fees as well. So I can send out, and I think I've sent it to Zane. I made a calculator to allow you to work through the scenario of a double close. And I can pull it up real quick so that we can take a look at it. As soon as I find my templates. Yeah, here we go. So happy to send this out. Essentially, it enables you to fill it out, just kind of like Nolan's forms. It sort of, you populate the green areas. So you put your A to B purchase price, your B to C purchase price, fees, down payment, fees on the B to C side, and then it spits out what your balance is. So in this case, our remaining proceeds on a 5.25 million to a 3.2 million dollar property, and this happens to be the Orange County one, our remaining proceeds would be $98,000, which, that's where you could split between the two entities, and they could walk away with 50,000 apiece or whatever, you figure out. So this is essentially helps you kind of figure out, is it a workable opportunity?
Man, that's cool right there. That is awesome. Let's do this. Matt, if you're not opposed to this, what if when I upload this video to school for everybody to get their eyes on, do you mind making a post on school about I'll include you on this post that you spoke today about what you do. But
Yeah.
if I'll just pin if you when you say something, I'll pin the video and I'll pin something that you put too. Because this is, I mean, for everybody that's still on here and the people that will, watch this replay, what you're providing, your service is like a legitimate need for, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is closing deals. I mean, on a $2 million deal, you got to put up at least 20, sometimes even 40,000 of earnest money on those deals, right? So
Right.
again, whether you're Elon Musk's or whether you're not, eventually you're going to run out of money just by tying deals up. So this is a great opportunity. And let me ask you this. I know we're getting down to the wire here on time. Matt, what information do you need from your sellers, buyers in order to actually transact with you? What is it? Is it financial statements? Is it tax returns? Like, what is it, just based strictly on the deal? What's our business relationship and how to take action with you?
Yeah, sure. So primarily it's the deal, right? So if you're buying a crappy deal, why would I put my earnest money into the deal? So it's got to have a strong opportunity, which is already where you all are at, right? We're all looking at good smoking deals that we know we can, good chance of closing out on. Oftentimes we will do a little bit of background, just make sure there's a legitimate person with a legitimate LLC. But typically we use social media and other ways to just kind of find out, is this person someone we want to work with? But because this is protected at title and we have that relationship with the title company, or we establish it if it's a new one, we don't really need to do any promissory notes per se. We have them sign one, but we don't do any type of leverage on another property or anything. It's not like a private money loan, because our strategy is that money's protected by a third party. So that's the basic information. Contract, and of course, we should talk before you get something under contract. There's some terminology. Certain states are a little more particular, but some phrases that we use in our language to ensure that the earnest money is released properly and back to the right person
Totally.
upon cancellation. Yeah.
Man,
So.
that's awesome. Well, let's do this then, man. Let me and I hate to cut it off. I know that it's Friday, 4 o'clock Central here. Again, what if you don't mind doing this, Matt? Once I upload this on school, maybe just make a post on your offering and what you guys do, and I will be giving you a call. You can count on that, because we got some. Everyone's got deals that we're trying to work on, and
Great.
this is a great partnership opportunity for anybody still on right now. This is like, I think this is another missing piece of adding this to your assembling of your team. A funder of earnest money like this is just amazing. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're big money or small money. Like, having somebody else show up like that allows you to continue focusing on, finding the next deal versus deploying capital into a title company.
That's right. I totally agree, of course. And on the double closing side, I have access to funds up to $100 million. So, and that's going to, typically be 2-3%, depending upon the situation.
Sure.
And if we're funding the down payment and transactional funding, that one's a little more nuanced, but that one is probably around more 3-4%. It does require a little more underwriting and cautionary tales to be introduced with lenders and ensuring you're not violating any terms. So, but Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Love to talk to anybody that's interested.
Count us in, man. That sounds awesome. All right, everyone.
Great.
Appreciate
Thanks.
everybody making on, Matt. Thanks for the time and what you showed us today. This is great, guys.
No, thank
All right,
you.
well, everybody have a great afternoon, great weekend. We have our next live call on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Central. So if you can make it, love to have you. We can keep on kind of rolling and going over members' deals and everything in between. So thanks so much for making on, everyone. Thanks so much.